Good day to all our viewers, our Midday Spring family, within here and nationwide and worldwide. You are all welcome to our session today. It's been an interesting journey within our 21 days for the second half of the year. And during the period, we've had sessions in the afternoon to study the Word of God and to delve deep into the things of God. Today, our discussion is to wrap up what we have gone through within the last 3 weeks. And with me to do that is our apostle who heads the C5 District Assembly, Apostle Andy Norte. Welcome to our session this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so the first question we'd like to ask Apostle Andy is that why Midday Springs and what is Midday Springs?
Well, thank you. I think Midday Springs basically is supposed to, well, it has the idea of bringing some kind of refreshment. Look at our context. Our context in Ghana and this part of Africa, this part of the world, is that during the day and middle of the day is very hot, and everyone will wish to have something that is refreshing. So consider yourself midday on the scorching sun, and then you get some cool springs to bring you refreshment. So that's the physical thing, but spiritually, it's supposed to talk about the kind of refreshment that spiritually we will get in the middle of our lives when things are very tough, when things are okay, something that brings us some kind of spiritual refreshment, times of refreshing from the presence of the Lord. So Midday Springs is a season during the times when believers are fasting and we are praying, waiting on God, and we are looking at an opportunity to have some encounter with God to bring us divine or times of refreshing from above. So the springs supposed to bring us spiritual refreshment in our lives. And because we normally do this in the middle of the day, so we use the midday to see. But basically that is what it's about. Times of refreshing from the presence of the Lord every afternoon, every midday during a 21-day fasting and prayer season. Yeah.
That's very good. So this one moves us away from the norm, because what happens is the midnight prayers, some all nights and everything. But this time around in the hot afternoon, in the middle of the day, when we are very busy with our work, and you are asking us, is it not too odd that you are drawing us from the busy days and bringing us within that 1 hour space to what makes you do that? What makes you bring us back to the afternoon to pay a little more attention to God?
Yes, the human nature is such that we get easily routinized, if I have to use that word. We get into mood and to action, and by the time we realize we have adjusted to the formula, we have adjusted to the environment, we have adjusted to the way things are done, and we can easily begin to respect the mood, the system, the formula faster, and then we can easily get lose hold of how to call it, the principles and the this thing behind it. In the everyday when you are at work, the pressures of work get you. It's forced on you, especially those who are really and busily working. And if you don't take care, by the time you realize you have nothing, you have lost the whole day without having contact with God. Very few believers have that kind of discipline where they can make time in the course of the day to say that I want to spend some 5 minutes, some 10 minutes with God, and to adjust myself and make sure that I'm still balanced. So we intentionally put there to disrupt the disruptions, and bring you back to some kind of normalcy, to bring some refreshment and new energies, spiritual energies for the rest of the day. So I think it's a very good time for your break time, so you don't overeat. And normally when we eat and we are full, a lot of things happen. So this one helps you to adjust and bring you back to the freshness of your spiritual life in the morning. Okay.
Okay, so it takes me to Psalm 91, verses 5, the B, that says, "Nor the arrows that flies at noonday." So that our focus should not only be the night issues, where we think that is when we have to deal
I
with the
think that is
devil.
too superstitious.
Okay.
I don't know, but perhaps our culture, certainly our cultures have formed that. That is too superstitious to think that evil forces only work at midnight.
But
In
Psalm
our,
91 is bringing us to
yes, yes,
realize
yes,
that
yes.
there are arrows that fly
Yes,
at
yes, yes.
noonday.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't know who is fixing the time for the devil and the demons to work, and witches and wizards. In our settings here or in our culture here, our small witches and wizards around, we are told that it is in the night they go to meetings and stuff like that. But they can cause havoc anytime, 24/7. And so I don't think that we should pay so much attention only to the night. All throughout the day, God is available. All throughout the day, evil forces are available. And I think that we should just not be too superstitious in about timings and stuff like that. Yeah.
Um, okay, so thank you very much. And the next question I would want us to focus on is we have the whole Bible to look at. And in this year, when we are dealing with each one bring one, and that was the focus, or that is the focus of our 21 days, fasting and prayers. In the midday, you are bringing us to a particular book in the Bible. What informed the choice for First Samuel that we are treating during the midday?
Okay, so the first half of the first part of the 21-day journey for this year in January was also focused on evangelism. And so we used the book of Acts, which is the book that talks about the evangelistic exploits of the church, the first church. And so we kind of exhausted the first 21 chapters of the book of Acts. And Acts is made up of only 28 chapters. And so basically, we don't have so much more to do with that. So I was prayerfully considering which book we should be reading. Just to get the church focusing on the word of God and reading and stuff like that. And I must tell you that I just felt led that let's go to First Samuel. Perhaps God has something there to share with us. Initially, I was contemplating the book of Deuteronomy for some reasons. Last minute, the Saturday before we started the 21 days, that I felt a strong move that, hey, go to First Samuel. To be honest with you, I was not so sure of what was going to come out of First Samuel, even before we did the recording for the first episode. But it was after the second, then I began to see the direction that God was leading. I realized that God had set a trap. He trapped me into that. Then the whole theme and the picture started coming to mind, so that the reflection started taking a focus. And I think that it's been a blessing. Yeah.
So it has been First Samuel chapters 1 to 21, and that has been the journey within the midday springs sessions. It has been an interesting journey. We want to see how best we can summarize the books that we have read. It's been quite scary, but I think God has a lot of lessons to teach us. The first question we want to ask is, why does the book start with Hannah?
Yes. So let me begin with this.
Let me ask that it's beginning to look like Hannah's struggles could be a miniature of Israel's issues that they have gone through. Why does the book start with the story
Yes,
of
a miniature in some way, a prototype in some way, but more of an example that perhaps Israel should have looked at, which I think they failed. And let me explain this way. This one may look a bit more academic, but I think that it will still help us. So I trust God that He will give me grace to explain that one. The writing or the compilation of the book of Samuel. So it has been splitted first and second Samuel, but it was literally one book, Samuel, the book of Samuel. And it began this way. The compilation was done several years after the events have happened.
Okay.
It wasn't as if as soon as something happened, then they were writing it and they were writing it. No, this is clear. This is very clear, and I don't want to spend so much time. But there are passages in it that when you read will tell you that, oh, okay, this one was written many years after, because somewhere they will tell you stuff like in First Samuel you will read things like, and the city of Ziklag is still part of the land of Judah even until this day. Until this day. So it tells you that, okay, so at the time they were compiling it, at the time the person was writing, many years have elapsed. But this kind of writings under inspiration of the Holy Ghost most of them are theological reflections. The Holy Spirit is now guiding the Deuteronomic historian, whoever God used to be writing this, now to look at what has happened in the life of Israel, and they were looking at it from now God's point of view and the lessons God wants them to learn from it. So let's start from 1 Samuel chapter 1. Hannah. Why did it start from Hannah? So Hannah had the lack. She had the lack in her life. She would have been comfortable, but something happened, okay? Provocations. And so she realized that, I need to meet that need. I need to meet that need. And then she goes to God in prayer. She had a husband. She had a priest at Shiloh, but she went to God. She had a husband, the one she needs consent with to have a child. Today, if married couples are looking for children, they agree, the man and the woman, and they go look for help. This woman had a husband, she had a high priest, and today she had a prophet. And she had a husband and a prophet, and yet she ignored both and went to God in prayer. Then she got a son, and the son was called Samuel. To be honest with you, the book of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, deals with two major prominent people. Okay, leaders were raised, yes, but two major prominent people, because their lives came into prominence in 1 Samuel, and that has to do with Samuel and Saul. Samuel from Hannah, and Saul from the rest of Israel. Why am I saying that? Samuel means I asked of the Lord. Acts of the Lord. Saul means as we requested. The one we requested, the one we asked for. Where no one knows, the source no one knows. But for Samuel it's clear. Samuel, El is God. Samu means we asked of, or I asked of. So Samuel means I asked of the Lord. Saul means I asked the one I asked for. And that is what tells us the story clearly. That's how come Hannah's life teaches us that you have a lack, you have a need in your life. Go to God and God will give to you. Israel had a lack. They went to Samuel and with anger. The attitude that Hannah approached a need was not the same attitude that Israel approached their need. They really had a need because there were several tribes and the tribes had tribal leaders. And there was a judge. If you have an issue, the judge will come and deal with you. But the tribal leaders were leading these people independently. And they had attacks from their enemies from angle. Dan goes to war, the rest don't care. Ephraim has been attacked, the rest are free. The tribe of Judah is attacked, the rest are free. They don't care. So they realized that they really had an issue. And they really need to have a united front, so that when any tribe is attacked from any angle, with a united front, they can fight and win.
But they always call for reinforcements from the others to assist them to do the fight.
Sometimes, yes. And that is when the others are ready. There were situations where the others never agreed. In the days of Gideon, for example, the others will not agree. You tell them, okay, if you don't join me, when I go and come, you see. That kind of thing. So the united front really mattered for them. And then they said, we wanted the king. But see, the approach was a terrible one. Their approach was a terrible one. They should have gone to God and said, this is my issue. This is the problem we have. You are our king. How do we solve this? Because in their case, they know God was their king, but their issue was different. So the story of Hannah was supposed to be an example to Israel that when you have a need in your life, you must get a Samuel. But when Israel had a need in their life, they went for a Saul, and that was their trouble.
Interesting times.
Interesting, yeah.
So we go back to Hannah. And Hannah has a need, just like you said, but she was provoked. Strong provocation.
Yeah.
And what was her reaction to the provocation? So I'm asking this in the light of looking at it in our terms, that when we are provoked, where do we tend to?
Yeah. Yeah, so we are provoked because things are happening to us. We lack things, and like Israel was, our enemies are laughing at us and they're asking, where is our God? Hannah had an attitude, and I think that every Christian of today must get it, because that is the attitude that honors God. The attitude that sees the sovereignty and respects the sovereignty of God is so critical, but it is missing in our times. We see the devil have more power than our God. We see our God like a God who is always absent-minded. We have a God who is always not present. We have a God who is gotten somewhere and he's lost control, and we have to shout on him so that he will come and take control, and then he will come and fight and that kind of thing. We have never seen him as our God who is on the throne and has always been on the throne. Before the sea was created, he was on the throne, and now that the sea is roaring with its waves, he is still on the throne, and that he will still be on the throne after the sea has finished roaring. We don't see him that way. Hannah and his contemporaries saw God as sovereign, and Hannah never, ever at any point in time attributed her barrenness to some enemies. They will always say, the Lord had shut my womb. In other words, if it is God who has shut my womb, he doesn't need to go and fight any witch in my village. I just go back to the God who has shut my womb and plead with him that, Daddy, please open my womb. And as soon as she had a child, they said, the Lord had opened my womb. It's a simple thing. If we can see God to be in charge, our prayers will make sense. Because most of the prayers we pray today, we annoy God because he interprets that one to mean that he's lost control. And we are now begging him to come and take control. So someone will provoke you, but then how do you interpret the provocation?
Where does it lead you
And
to?
where does it lead you to?
Onto righteousness, onto something else.
To honor God or to dishonor him? To see him as the one in charge, or to see him as one that you are now calling him to come and take control?
So for our viewers, we will take a short break and we'll be right back. Viewers, welcome back. Before we went on our break, we were looking at the chapter 1, where it started with Hannah, who had a need and had to go to God despite the people who were around him. We've learned that we should have the attitude of Hannah, that when we have a need, we go to God. And we have also realized that Hannah's life is exactly the life that the Israelites have gone through as well. We were talking about provocation before our break, and we asked Apostle, so when we are provoked, should I say provoked unto righteousness? Then we look at God, or in all our circumstances. And especially when Bible tells us that it was the Lord who had a hand in this particular act. I want to find out. Yes, we are provoked. But when do we know that God has a hand in this kind of situation that we find ourselves?
So when you say God had a hand, I don't know what you mean, but there are two things quickly.
Okay, so what I mean is that in Hannah's case, Bible said that the Lord had shut her womb.
Good.
And it's repeated twice, very emphatic.
Yes. So the point is this. Is there anything that happens on the planet Earth that God does not have a hand in it? There are two things. There are some said there are two ways to look at it. There are things that God himself initiates. So in this story, it will seem that God initiated Hannah's barrenness for a reason. But there are things that God did not initiate, but he permits.
Okay.
You see, his sovereignty means that nothing escapes his eyes. His sovereignty means that nothing can happen when he has not permitted it. But there is something else that God's sovereignty uses, God's sovereignty employs to ensure that at the end of the day, what God wants happens in life. And it is called divine providence. Divine providence is how God allows the things that happens to you, the positives and the negatives. He sits as a sovereign God, and he providence says, okay, today it can go bad, today it can go. No, so don't worry. The devil want to do this to you. Don't worry, let him do it. I know what I'm doing. You let him do that, let me do that. At the end of the day, divine providence is when now he allows all things that has happened to work together for your good. That is divine providence. And divine providence is what God uses, what his sovereignty employs to ensure that his children will never, and I'm using the word never, capital Never, never at the end of the story be disadvantaged. Never.
May
Never.
God help us.
Never.
May God help us to see his hand and his providence in our walk with him.
That's right.
So we move on and we realize that Hannah is gifted with a child after the hard birth. And within that time, she vowed to give the child back to God. And she honored her word. As I was thinking through, within the space, it says God will honor those who honor him. Hannah did that. And Hannah sent the child to God. What lessons do we draw in our lives now? Because under a lot of pressure, people can say things. When they are settled, it is another story altogether.
Yeah. I watched a documentary, a U.S. documentary of Fidel Castro, Cuba. And you could see that Fidel Castro started as a rebel, somebody trying to fight to free the Cuban people from what he saw as a bad leadership. And when he was fighting as a rebel from the bush, and was now coming, U.S. was supporting him. Okay, so the U.S. was supporting Fidel Castro, and when Castro got the seat, U.S. realized that the guy is not the one we thought he was.
They didn't know him.
And I was watching the documentary, and I loved a question that the narrator, okay, the one who was narrating the story, asked. They said, this is what Fidel Castro looks like when he was in the bush and he was fighting and he was talking to the press and he was giving the command and the people were happy with him and stuff like that. And now look at him latter days in his day. Then he posed a question. Did he lie or did he change? And I was like, maybe we should call Castro back and ask him, did you lie or did you change? But that is the question. Exactly the question we are posing to many people, many Christians today. Do we lie or do we change? And if you listen to what Solomon said, it looks like most of us change.
Okay.
When we are in trouble, we are in difficulties, we seem to be sincere. We trust our own ability to be sincere and to be righteous. And it is when we have gotten the respite, the help, the answers have come, then we realize that, hey, so we normally change. We normally change. And it is because we didn't even know ourselves and we don't understand ourselves and what we are talking to God about. God knows us deeply from within. So Solomon will tell you, don't give me more than I need because I can change. Yeah, and don't let me be too hungry because I can change. Psalm 125 verse 3 says that the scepter of the wicked shall not rest upon the lot of the righteous, lest the righteous will put forth his hand to do evil. Depending on what's happening, whether we are stretched too much, we can change. And when we are overly blessed, we can change. So the prayer is, God, keep us within boundaries so that we won't change. We will still love and fear you. But the issue is that Hannah was very sincere. She knew what she was looking for. For Hannah, she was not necessarily looking for a child she'll be leaking every day, and this is my son, and this is my son, to show off to anyone. Because eventually she gave the child back to God. She gave the child back to God. She just wanted something. God, let it be cancelled. Don't let my enemies laugh at me that I'm barren. So let me just have a child. I'll give it back to you. Now my enemies cannot say I'm barren. I just want that one. That's also. She was, and she knows she could handle that. When we are making vows, I think we should be extra careful. We should be sincere to ourselves. Truly tell yourself what you want. Truly tell yourself, this is what I want. And don't let me pretend I can deceive God by telling him I want something else.
So
That
just
is it.
like you said, oh, kata weni kakra, na wa dada nyako.
And what that Yakupon, like the boys who went to look for the mango. Say, oh God, this is my last stone. When I throw it, let me get 3 mangoes. Me and my brother will take one, and they will give you the other 2. Because all the stones they brought for the mangoes are finished, and they've not gotten 1 mango. So the last stone, he said, God, I beg you, this stone, let it bring me 3 mangoes, so that we will give you 2. Then me and my brother will take 1. Then the brother said, hey, what did mango didn't have a man coupon? They said, me dada. You know, most Christians do that. They tell God things in prayer, but deep inside their heart, they think God is like a man. I think we should know better. Come back right way.
He knows us more than we know ourselves.
Yes, yeah.
And so let's be careful when we are going before him.
That's right.
So Samuel is now in the picture. And Samuel is sent to the house of God right after weaning. So Samuel was a little boy when his mother sent him to the house of God. At some point in time, we are told that Samuel is sleeping by the ark of God. And Eli is sleeping somewhere.
In his own place.
In his own place. I don't know the structure of the auditorium.
It wasn't an auditorium. It was a tabernacle.
Okay, so I don't really have an idea. I mean, in the tabernacle, the ark was in the inner chamber, right? So
Okay.
does that mean that the boy was in there, sleeping there? And
No. So when Israel got to the promised land, a lot changed.
Okay,
A lot changed. So this time, this one was a simple tabernacle.
okay.
A very simple one, not as complex as it was there. But whatever it is, he was sleeping closer to the ark than Eli was sleeping. To the ark. Eli was sleeping in his own place, and Samuel was sleeping by the ark of the covenant. Yes, certainly.
So Samuel is in the picture, and Eli's sons are mentioned, that they are wicked sons. And if we are reading 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 17, it says that the sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt.
Yeah.
It sends shivers.
Hmm.
I read the Gun version that says, Amebu Yehowa Afolisha Hebuo. Another version says disdain. And that is the reason why they were titled wicked sons. God didn't take that lightly at all. I want to find out in our days, probably when we talk of offering, people think the money I'm putting in the offering bowl, the service I'm rendering to God, that is all in the sight of men. What are we doing or not doing? That is actually treating the Lord's offering with contempt.
Let me even begin from Hannah. Hannah could have waited for Samuel to be maybe 20 years, 30 years. You are old now, you can go and be a priest or go and serve in the house of God. You know why Hannah brought Samuel quickly? If it was possible for Samuel to leave Hannah without even taking breast milk, Hannah would have done that. So she brought the boy at the point where he realized that the boy can literally, so to say, take care of himself or something. And the boy he can say, I want to wee, I want to do that. Weaned off. So now he can live. You can give him food, he can eat himself and stuff like that. In the Israelites, their Hebrew, their system, in their thinking, in their culture, by the time you are 12, you are old enough to inherit somebody. You are mature. You are ushered. You go through process. That's why at age 12, Jesus was taken to Jerusalem. They performed right for him. He's now a man. And as a man, you are used. You are no more brand new. If you are 12 years, you are no more brand new. You are now Obroni Wewu. And Hannah will not wait for Samuel to become Obroni Wewu before she brings Samuel to the Lord. Immediately, long before Samuel will get to that age where it could be said that you have benefited from the boy before you are bringing the boy to me. So that was how she honored God with her offering. In our times, our view of God is so blurred. And I've been talking about this 2-eye concept thing, primary eye, secondary eye. I think it permeates a lot of things that I begin to see these days. A lot of things that I begin to see. So our view of God is so blurred that when we are bringing offerings, we say, we are bringing offering to God. But the only time we see Christians of today becoming so serious that this offering is for God, this offering for God, is when they want God to answer a certain prayer.
They are bribing God.
They want God to answer a certain prayer. Then they realize that this offering is for God. In fact, that is when they take the offering and they pray special prayers. When they don't need any special thing from God, that offering is not special. They don't even put it in an envelope. See, that thinking alone is an issue. We must appreciate that who we are and what we have all belong to God. And we are giving to God not just what we have, but who we are. And we are not doing God a favor when we give him any offering. We are only bringing it as in response to our belief that everything is of God. So if the thing belongs to God and he says, take that and bring it to me, you do that not as if you are doing him a favor, but that you have opportunity to even be a steward of his own grace, and then you are bringing it back to him. And I think that God should be honored in that respect. So some people, it is one thing my father doesn't like at all. He just hates it. That you are going to church and the offering is like this. It's like, it's money, yes. But he doesn't even like it crumbled. No, don't do that. Fold it neatly. Because when you are bringing me, you want to give me money, you want to give me a gift, you don't crumble it. So how do you crumble it then and put it in the offering bowl? So physically, he even has an issue with the way we even handle the money we call offering. They come to think about our understanding of what we think we are doing. That is part of how we disdain offering these days. And then how we use the money that has come is also a way to show how we respect or dishonor that offering. The one bringing it as an issue to honor God, the one using it has an issue. So how did I bring it? And how was it used? All shows whether we are honoring God with the offering.
Can you touch on this aspect of we offering our bodies as a living sacrifice?
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. The songwriter said, praise the Savior, ye who know him. Who can tell how much we owe him? Gladly let us render to him all we have and all we are. So all we have and all we are, we ourselves, this body as a living sacrifice to God. Meaning this, you see, a sacrifice in the understanding was an animal that was killed and put on the altar. That animal doesn't come back. They call us living sacrifice because when we lift my body today, and whatever God wants to use my time, my energies, and this body for must be available. And I'm withholding it from God, then I am not a sacrifice. I am not. I'm withholding, see, and that's the difference between the Old Testament thing and the New Testament. Remember that when the children of Israel got to the promised land, God told them that the nation that surrounds you, they do human sacrifice. And the understanding why they do human sacrifice is that what is more valuable on this planet apart from a human being? We want to sacrifice it to our God. But God said, no, you don't permit. I don't like that one. So grace is bringing us to the point where God says, now you yourself take your body and put it on the altar. Can I take it and do with it as I want? Is your time, your energy, your body, your strength, your skill, your wisdom, and all that has acquired into your life, are they all available to God? If they are, then you are really an offering to God. But if they are not, and if your times, your energy, and all that God has given you, and all what God has given you has also brought into your life, they don't serve God, then you are not an offering yet. You are not an offering yet.
God have mercy.
His mercies abounded all the time.
We are to note that we don't have to treat the offering of God with disdain, because when the children of Eli did, they suffered it greatly.
And let me tell this one to church leaders, presiding elders, pastors, those of us who have authority and control over church finances. Those people, it wasn't money then, it was meat. And they more handled it. How we use church finances is a very sure way of how we are treating God's offering. And if you don't want the wrath that came upon Phinehas and Hophni to come upon you, let's be careful how we use church money. That is what I would say.
Let us be careful how we use God's resources and his offerings. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Viewers, you are welcome back. In our segments this time round, we've looked at chapters 1 and 2 deeply, and I think it gives us a summary of how the journey within the 21 days has been. You realize that God called Samuel. The children of Israel asked for a king. And after these two scenarios, God chose a man after his own heart. Why did he call Samuel? Allow the people to say we want a king. And when they had messed up, he then decides to enter the game and play the game all by himself.
So this is the sovereign God for you. And I think that for those of us in this New Testament era, and when I even say New Testament era, I mean post-first century Christianity, who now have access to what we call Old Testament and New Testament. We are so blessed. The people who lived New Testament times felt they were blessed. And Paul, for one, will say that, I'm telling you, brothers, that these things that were written in the Old Testament, or he calls it the scriptures, or they call the scriptures, these things that were written in the scriptures were written for our learning. Look at him. He was saying that they were written for their learning. So what shall we say? We have Old Testament and the New Testament. But they were written for our learning. And we are seeing something clearly here. God wanted a leader. And like I'm saying, that his sovereignty and then uses his providence to get the things that he wants done to be done. So basically, that is what is happening here. He shut Hannah's womb, forced Hannah to the corner. So Hannah will say, okay, God, just give me a child and I'll give the child back, because he really wanted a child that would be given to him, not when used, brand new. And so he forced Hannah to the corner. Hannah got there. The plan worked. Hannah cried and said, God, give me a son. I'll give the son back. Then he said, yeah, that's what I want. Hannah got a son and brought the son to God and said, good, I'm going to use him, because God has seen clearly what was happening, that he needs to raise somebody of his kind, somebody he loves, somebody he has prepared. So that was how come Samuel came to the scene. Then Israel, they asked for a king. And the lesson here is this. We are humans, and sometimes we can allow the difficulties that press on us to ignore the blessings that we have already around us. God has been their king.
Very different.
God had been their king all along.
Very unique and very different.
Very unique, very different. And with Samuel as the judge, he's led them, and God has given them victories. And they have named a certain place Ebenezer.
That's fine.
Ebenezer means the stone of remembrance. Unfortunately, they didn't remember. Ebenezer means stone of remembrance. And what do they remember? They say, we are remembering that thus far has the Lord brought us. The Lord. When out of nothing, he made us overcome and trash and destroyed our enemies. They fled, we chased them, we killed them.
When they were but few.
When we were but few and we had no physical, and God was our king. Theocracy was the order of the day. And now, if those enemies are coming back, they said that they lost sight of the fact that it was God who was leading them and not necessarily Samuel. So they said, oh, Samuel, we can see you. They didn't say, God, we realize you are getting old. And so they say, Samuel, you are getting old. But Samuel was not their king. God was their king. But like I'm saying, human beings, we adapt quickly to the methods and the formulas that we forget the principles. So God gave them Samuel to be the spokesperson, and all of a sudden they think Samuel is the main person. So now that you are growing old and we cannot trust your children, we want a king like the other nations. That's the issue. If they even just said we want a king, full stop, Samuel would have reminded them. But the problem now is like the other nations, because Samuel they reminded them. God has been your king, but the issue for them is not who has been our king. It has not been like the other nations. So they have learned from the world around them, and they want to follow them. They've lost their identity and their uniqueness.
Which eye is active?
It is the secondary eye. They have lost the primary eye that sees things the way God sees them, that allows them to understand and appreciate the things of God the way it has to be appreciated. And they have gained the secondary eyes which were open in the Garden of Eden when we ate the fruit. That eye that were open, it now sees the physical things and responds to natural things. So that one was more active, and they could see the natural things and looks more attractive. When Eve saw that the fruit was good for food, nice to behold, and desired to make one wise, the secondary eye is the setting. So basically, that is what happened to them. It was so sad, but they couldn't see God in the things, in the scheme of things.
Samuel drew their attention to what will happen if they asked for a king. They said they still want it.
Because looking at the other nations, what they were seeing from as the outsider's perspective. You know, when you are looking at things, there are two ways. They call them ethic and emic. Outsider's perspective and insider's reality. So you can look at something from outside. When somebody is not within an organization and the person is looking at the organization from outside, they have what you call outsider's perspective. And the people who are within the organization, they're also looking at the organization, they have what we call insider's reality. So they saw the outsider's perspective, and they thought, we want a king like the other nations. And they thought somebody was just trying to con them so that he would let his children lead, or he himself will continue in office and stuff. And they're like, we will not have any of that. We want a king like the other nations. Yeah.
Okay, so Apostle, within that space before they asked for a king, Eli's children were on the scene, doing all sorts of things.
When
Could
they
that
asked for a king.
Yes. Could that be the reason why they thought these
Eli's
two,
children or
Samuel's children,
Yeah.
these two cannot take over from their father, and so we would want somebody else to come?
Yes,
So
yes,
that-
yes. That was, and I mentioned it in one of the chapters.
I'm
Yes.
asking because could that be the reason why members would put a certain demand on leadership, because they don't really like what is going on in leadership?
Yes, you see, so, like I said, look at the first trouble that came on the house of Eli was because Eli was said to have failed to put his children in order. It's because the children were not right. The second trouble that is coming not now upon any house, but upon the house of Israel as a whole, was because a certain father too has not done well in raising the children. See, the generations, how we usher in the next generation, and how as families, as Christian families, we raise our children to make sure that they are better than we were. Is the issue here now. Eli's children, too bad. Trouble upon the house of Eli. Samuel's children, too bad. Trouble upon the house. So this failure, parental failures, set up those Eli's family for destruction and set up Israel into an error in rejecting God. Basically, that's what happened. Israel was set up to reject God because they couldn't see leadership in Samuel's children. So if Samuel had raised the children well, Israel would not have asked for a king. It would have just been that then the children take over leadership.
Leadership is not a joke.
It is not a joke. It's not a joke. And we need to pray, and that's why my concern. We need to pray for ministers and stuff like that, because sometimes the burden of the nation. And I'm not surprised that Paul did not have a wife and did not have a family. Because if you look at his missionary life, his children would have been terribly spoiled. maybe, just maybe. Okay, so it's a big issue. But parental failure set up the whole house of Eli into trouble. Parental failure set up the whole house of Israel into trouble. So may God give us grace, parents, so that we will learn and we will receive the grace to raise our children in the fear of the Lord. That, who knows? And listen to Genesis 18:19. This is what God said about Abraham. I always love it. He says, Abraham, I know him, that he will raise his children in the fear of the Lord. And they will fear God and they will walk in his judgment. And listen to what happens. He said that so that the promises I've given Abraham will come to pass. The promises coming to pass is hinged on him raising his children and his household after the fear of the Lord. And we have seen it here, that once Eli couldn't do that, the promise couldn't continue after him. His generation ended it. Samuel, once he failed to do that, he couldn't continue after him.
But the promises were still hanging on.
The promises were there.
Waiting for those who do it right, and then it will land on them.
And God always has children. I tell people that the descendant of Abraham, not just you alone. Your children are also descendants of Abraham. So when you misbehave, God will wipe you off. Your children come up, they are also descendants of Abraham. And God will still have been faithful to Abraham. Not a particular generation. Anyone born in the line of Abraham is qualified to receive the promise. Okay.
It's getting very interesting. But Apostle, we've not even done half of the book of First Samuel.
So sad.
But God is good. I want to believe that this one is setting us up to go deeper and really get deeper understanding in the things that God wants us to know.
Yeah.
We'll take a break and we'll come back to wrap up. Viewers, we are welcome back. And this is our last session where we try to wrap up our discussion. But before we went on the break, we were cautioned to be careful how we raise the next generation, because the promise is for the children, Abraham's descendants. And once you fall in the line, the promise is there for you. If you miss it, God will send it to the next generation. And so let's be careful about how we raise our children. In this segment, we want to look at how the CVs of the kings that came into the scene. So we'll look at that of Saul, and then we'll look at that of David, and how that played in how they led the children of God. So we're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 9, the chapters 1 and 2. Verses 1 and 2 of 1 Samuel chapter 9. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abel, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechorath, the son of Abiah of Benjamin. He had a son named Saul, an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. And then we come to 1 Samuel 16, verse 18, and that talks about David. One of the servants answered, I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem, who knows how to play the harp. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well, and he is He's a fine-looking man, and the Lord is with him. Apostle, two CVs of kings that led Israel. What lessons do we draw from this in choosing a leader to lead our people?
So leadership is critical. John Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. He says leadership is the cause, everything else is the effect. But if you look into the scriptures, you see also clearly that he didn't make these things up. He didn't create them. He just discovered them. That God has paid so much attention to leadership. There's no two ways about that. God has paid so much attention to leadership. Leadership is so critical in the scheme of things, and theologically it is foundational. Okay, leading with example and stuff like that. But look at the two CVs. We have the CV of the man who is supposed to be a king like the other nations. He must have the qualifications of kings like the other nations. Then we have the CV of a man who is after God's own heart. His CV is the CV of a man after God's own heart. That's the difference. It's sad. And during Midday Springs, I kept repeating when I got to this place. It's like, really? The CV of the king is that he's tall and he's handsome.
And when he stands, from the shoulder to the head, there was none like him.
Or a thing. Or what? And that's all they wanted, because the other nations do that. They look for huge man. No wonder when Goliath appeared, they asked him to lead them to war. He was huge. You need somebody of physique, because that was what they asked for. A king like the other nations. That statement they make.
Are you speaking to the young ladies?
No, so that's why I'm coming to. Young ladies, young men. When you are doing this, we ask you, why are you doing that? But everybody is doing that. Are you everybody? These are people that God says that you are supposed to be a peculiar people to me. And for those of us who are in the New Testament, 1 Peter 2:9 says that ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people. And all your life, you want to dress because you saw it on the internet, somebody dressed like that. You are doing this because they say some nameless, faceless people are doing some things, and you are copying them. You are dressing and behaving like the other nations. Be careful.
The CVs myopic.
Terrible. So that was the issue. That was the foundational error. Because you can never lead God's people with thinking one. No. And then when God chose a man after his own heart, he was skillful. And he had the presence of God. These two things, in the New Testament, we will say, he fears the Lord his God with all his heart. He loves the Lord with all his heart. He has the vertical relationship. And then he has the horizontal relationship. And that was how David's life. And let me tell you, because of this CV of David, do you know the summary of David's ministry as a king? Psalm 78, verse 72. Read it. Look at how David ended. And how his whole ministry as a king was summarized by the people of Israel. Psalm 78, verse 72. Read it.
Verse 72 says that, and David shepherded them with integrity of heart.
That was where his connection with God comes in.
With skillful hands he led
and that is where his competence comes in. Your relationship with God, that's the vertical relationship. And the competence has to do with the horizontal.
So what is just coming to mind is that his skill was not acquired whilst everybody was there.
No, it was in the bush. It was in the bush. When he had to convince Saul that he can fight Goliath. Did he talk about who his father was? No. Did he talk about what funny things. No, he talked about his battle and experience with the lion and the bear in the bush when no one was there.
And when God delivered them into his
Eh,
hands.
pepe. And it was on that basis that he had the permission to fight Goliath, and it was that fight that launched him onto the scene. So he has been prepared. It wasn't a 9-day wonder. Young 2 year old, you are better than your president. You are better than your pastor. You are better than this. And you can do it. These people don't know what they are doing. They don't know. Madam Fotobo, you must go through the same desert experiences. You must learn how to battle the lions when no one is there and battle the bear. You may have wounds on you. You think that he left unscratched? No. He would have marks on his body. A lion fighting a lion, there will be scratches here and there. There will be wounds. You must heal them. But then no one was there to mark those ones. He prepared you and he worked on you.
You must build the CV.
You must build a proper one. And now anything here.
I miss our late Jacob Oforikwe. And he says, study to show thyself approved. It was a theme for committee.
One of the committees.
A workman that needed not be ashamed, but rightly dividing the word of truth. And I want to believe that is the preparatory time.
Yes. And in fact, the word steady there, if you bring into modern English, means make every effort. Don't just pretend as if you are trying. Make every effort. If you read the tree, it says, boy, modern say. Boy, don't say I tried it and did. Boy, modern, make every effort. Every single effort to ensure that you are a right man. I mean, to show yourself approved. Okay, as a workman that needed not to be ashamed. So look at Saul. He was ashamed because but as for him, he don't know because a king, and that's the lesson we have to learn here. A king like the other nations cannot lead God's people effectively and successfully. Never.
Apostle, that's what meets the eye in our generation.
That's what meets the secondary eye.
The secondary eye, and that is what someone said, we will not sit until he has come back. Before we will sit. We will not sit. We will wait for him. And he was in the wilderness doing his work through the preparation. Nobody knew him. His brother said, have you finished taking care of the little sheep that has been given to you? And this is somebody who is brought into the light to take up a leadership position. I'm sure he himself had to battle a lot of things in our system now. Ofihi and Obai.
Daben.
How do you handle it if you find yourself as a David in a situation like that? Daben Obai.
And normally, Daben Obai or those asking that you don't know you, certainly they don't know you and they don't have to know you anyway. Because they are not calling and they don't have a vineyard and calling into the vineyard. Basically, what I would say is that take your time, because when the fullness of time has come, nobody can stop you from being launched. In fact, God will, through sovereignty and divine providence, set up the system that a Goliath must come and defy. If there was no Goliath, Saul would have led them to war.
It will start with an evil spirit tormenting. For you to get into the palace to learn
some few things about the palace. Then God will go to the Philistines, raise a Goliath, and change their thinking and tell them that they should change the tenets of the war. And so this time, instead of coming to the usual war, they say, no, it should be 1-1. The guns, when we're children, we'll call it 1-1. So, God was in the detail from the Philistine side.
Sure.
Just to prepare David, because his time has come. And his brothers will even look down on him. Because if it was not for Goliath mesmerizing them, how would David appear on the scene? He is not yet up to the age for national service where he will be invited to serve in the army. A friend of mine would say, Oshakujano.
Sure.
Oshakujano. So basically, he wouldn't be there, but God's timing has come, and the people will not receive him. So God has to set up by divine providence a scenario that requires only his preparation, his skill, and what God has done for him to meet that thing. And that was Goliath. That even Saul was afraid of him. But David was not afraid because he had been prepared. And that's how God will set him up. So if you enter into an environment and people are saying, that better not buy, that better not, keep quiet and continue serving your God. Don't ever be ambitious. Don't raise your hand and put your poster anywhere. Vote for me. Wait, because if God has a timing for you, when the fullness of time is come,
When the fullness
of time is come, the people cannot. But you say David has killed 10,000.
Saul has killed 1,000.
Yes,
His 1,000.
His 1,000.
Saul has killed his 1,000.
And David 10,000.
Tens of thousands.
Amazing.
We won't finish exhausting the first book of Samuel.
Yeah.
But this is what time will permit us to have. But it's about leadership. And don't look at leadership in that context. Where you find yourself in that small space, you're a leader. And ask yourself, what CV do you have? And how well will you write your CV? I think when we are going to look for jobs, we try hard to put the best foot forward. It's effort. And so for leadership, we must put in our best foot. And not with the mind of having to deceive God like, or not wanting to have like the others, but to know that we are unique and God deals with us as individuals. But then we must avail ourselves, we must prepare ourselves, and we must wait for the providence and the timings of God. Apostle, God richly bless you.
Thank you.
It's been a refreshing time.
God bless you.
Let me finally ask you, has Midday Springs come to stay?
Yeah, it has come to stay only within 21-day fasting and prayer seasons, and not after that. So it is only available during 21-day fasting and prayer season, and not beyond that. Not before that and not after that.
All right. So this is just for us to know that as we wait for the next season, we still have these ones on our YouTube handles and Facebook. You can always go back and you won't finish exhausting it. God bless all of us for this time.
Thank you too. God bless you.